Well, today we continue our Noah series, and we're going to take a look at the Great Flood. And in case you're wondering, if you've been around the church for a few years, the Great Flood is not what happened in 9 or 10, and we had to build the 250,000 flood wall out back. Okay, this is a different flood than that one. This is the one before that one. Okay. Noah and the flood. I'm loving this series because it's given us a chance to get some good Bible, just some good Bible stories and hear them and remember them and maybe look at them and see what God has to say to us through them. So we're going to read a couple of chapters today. So buckle down, get ready to go. Are you ready for this? Here we go. The Lord said to Noah, we're starting in chapter 7, in case you want to follow along in your Bible, but it will be on the screen as well. The Lord said to Noah, go into the ark with your whole household, because among this generation I've seen that you are a moral man. From every clean animal, take 7 pairs, a male and his mate, and from every unclean animal, take 1 pair, a male and his mate. And from the birds in the sky as well, take 7 pairs, male and female, so that their offspring will survive throughout the earth. In 7 days from now, I will send rain on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights. I will wipe off from the fertile land every living thing that I have made. Noah did everything that the Lord commanded him. Remember, we've already been looking at Noah and how he is faithful and obedient to God. Verse 6, Noah was 600 years old when the flood waters arrived on earth. Noah, his sons, his wife, and his sons' wives with him entered the ark to escape the flood waters. From the clean and the unclean animals, from the birds and everything crawling on the ground, 2 of each, male and female, went into the ark with Noah, just as God commanded Noah. After 7 days, the flood waters arrived on the earth. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, on the 17th day, on that day, all the springs of the deep sea erupted, and the windows in the skies opened. Now, remember their worldview. Remember that, right? So we have the creation. We have this dome, and the windows are open up, and that's how the water starts coming down. That's how rain comes in. They saw the sky as a dome, that there was a covering over there that separated the chaos out there from the order that was in the world. That was their worldview. That's how they saw it. So the windows in the sky opened up. It rained on the earth 40 days and 40 nights. That same day, Noah with his sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, Noah's wife, and his sons' 3 wives, went into the ark. They and every kind of animal, every kind of livestock, every kind that crawls on the earth, every kind of bird, they came to Noah and entered the ark, 2 of every creature that breathes. Male and female of every creature went in, just as God had commanded him. Then the Lord closed the door behind them. The flood remained on the earth for 40 days. The waters rose, lifted up the ark, and it rode high above the earth. The waters rose and spread out over the earth. The ark floated on the surface of the waters. The waters rose even higher over the earth. They covered all the highest mountains under the sky. And listen to this next verse. It's interesting. The waters rose 23 feet high. You wondered if they were in the panhandle, because the tallest thing in the panhandle is like a stalk of wheat, right? Panhandle, so 23 feet. That's actually meaning 23 feet, at least 23 feet above the highest mountain, because the boat set in 5 cubits into the water when it was loaded with all the animals, and it didn't scrape the mountaintop. So that's where they get that number. Covering the mountains. Every creature took its last breath. The things crawling on the ground, birds, livestock, wild animals, everything swarming on the ground, and every human being. Everything on dry land with life's breath in its nostrils died. God wiped away every living thing that was on the fertile land. From human beings to livestock to crawling things to birds in the sky, they were wiped off the earth. Only Noah and those with him on the ark were left. The waters rose over the earth for 150 days. But look how chapter 8 starts. God remembered Noah. We've heard that line before, haven't we? God remembered Noah. All those alive, all the animals with him in the ark. God sent a wind over the earth so that the waters receded. The springs of the deep sea and the skies closed up. The skies held back the rain. Again, you have this picture of the domes, the chaos out there, and they shut the windows so that the rain can no longer come down. The waters receded gradually from the earth. After 150 days, the waters decreased. And in the 7th month, on the 17th day, the ark came to rest on the Ararat Mountains. The waters decreased gradually until the 10th month. And on the first day of the 10th month, the mountain peaks appeared. After 40 days, Noah opened the window of the ark that he had made. Is anybody counting up all the days that has gone by so far? Noah opened the window of the ark that he had made. He sent out a raven, and it flew back and forth until the waters over the entire earth had dried up. Then he sent out a dove to see if the waters on all of the fertile land had subsided. But the dove found no place to set its foot. It returned to him in the ark, since waters still covered the entire earth. Noah stretched out his hand, took it, and brought it back into the ark. He waited 7 more days and sent the dove out from the ark again. The dove came back to him in the evening, grasping a torn olive leaf in its beak. Now, if you will remember seeing things in our history, especially our history with Israel, the olive branch and a dove's beak is a sign of peace. Okay, so this is a sign. In this story, this is a sign from God that all is good. Okay, this is a sign that all is good. That's what that's about. Then Noah knew that the waters were subsiding from the earth. He waited 7 more days and sent out the dove, but it didn't come back to him again. In Noah's 601st year, on the first day of the 1st month, the waters dried up from the earth. Noah removed the ark's hatch and saw that the surface of the fertile land had dried up. In the 2nd month, on the 17th day, the earth was dry, and God spoke to Noah. We don't see that God has spoken to Noah through all this time, okay? He says, but God speaks to Noah now. Go out of the ark, you and your wife, with your sons and your sons' wives with you. Bring out with you all the animals of every kind, birds, livestock, everything crawling on the ground, so that they may populate the earth, be fertile, and multiply on the earth. So Noah went out of the ark with his sons, his wife, and his sons' wives. All the animals, all the livestock, all the birds, and everything crawling on the ground came out of the ark by their families. Noah built an altar to the Lord. First thing Noah does, Noah built an altar to the Lord. He took some of the clean, large animals and some of the clean birds and placed entirely burnt offerings on the altar. The Lord smelled the pleasing scent, and the Lord thought to himself, I will not curse the fertile land anymore because of human beings, since the ideas of the human mind are evil from their youth. I will never again destroy every living thing as I have done. As long as the earth exists, seed time and harvest, cold and hot, summer and autumn, day and night, will not cease. And here ends the reading of God's Word. So when we look at this part of the story and what's led up to the story, the overview is like on the surface there seems to be the story of death and destruction. But as we dig a little bit deeper in this story and we get a little farther in the story, we really find what's happening is that God is at work in our world and is responding to the violence and the destruction that we cause And he's responding to that by remaking the world. Now, God doesn't demolish everything. God doesn't start from scratch making new Adams or new human beings from the dust of the earth. He chooses to work with who is already a part of creation and those who are willing to be redeemed. That's who he works with. And so in this is the picture that we see in the flood. Now, in this story, as we've continued this story for several weeks now, we also, the previous week's scripture passages, we've seen that God remembers or notices Noah, right? In the midst of the violent chaos in society, all the things that were going on, there was evil continually in all people's minds, is what Scripture said. In the midst of all that violent, evil, chaotic world, God remembers or notices Noah. And now this is what happens before the flood. Now, again, in the midst of the flood, during the flood, or the upheaval that's going on, God remembers Noah or notices Noah again. Now, I want us to be sure that we get the picture of it makes a lot of sense when we start thinking about this picture from the way the people who were hearing it would have heard it in their minds. So what's happening is you remember when the beginning of creation, the story in Genesis 1, God created the earth. And then he said it was without form and void, and darkness covered the face of the earth, and there was all this chaos and the water everywhere. And so there was water and this chaos going on, and God formed land, and God brought the land up, and he made the water to go under the land, it says, or around the land. In other words, the land's higher than the water. And then it says the rest of the chaos, in their mind view, God created or separated it with this dome that went over what they saw as a flat earth. And this dome separated the earth from the chaos, and so all the water chaos there. So what happens in the destruction of the flood is the springs come up, the water from underneath, the separation. When God created order out of chaos, that chaos takes back over. God steps back, basically, and the chaos takes back over. The water from underneath comes up. The water, the chaos from outside this dome comes in and fills the earth so that humanity can't live on it unless they're on the ark. And so this is the picture. It's not just a flood. It's the picture of the chaos in their story of the birth of the earth, the story of the creation. This flood is reminiscent of and a result of all this chaos in the water that has been separated. God steps back, the chaos comes back, and then God's going to work. And in this story, in this part of the story, God brings back order to the chaos and says, I'll never do that again. So in this new chaos, the flood, God remembers Noah. The first verse of chapter 8, God remembers Noah. And see, here's the thing. God remembers us too. In the midst of all the things that are going on, God remembers us too. In the ark, God remembered them. It seemed like now when you count all the days, if you're a numbers person and you were counting up all those days that went, and the best that I've read is that the number of days from the time they were told to get on the boat to the time they got off the ark was about 370, 380 days. So somewhere it was right at a solar year, okay, that they were on, that the flood affected their lives as far as them being on the boat. And so today, the picture of the earth, and this is kind of what I want to talk about for a moment today. There's often today we're given the picture that the church is the ark. That the church is here as the tool that God has chosen for the salvation of his own people. That the ark, that the church is here as the tool, as the unit that God will use so that God's people won't drown in all the chaos and all the things that are going on around. Now, you notice it's an ark and not a kayak, right? Okay? Now, I like to kayak. Rhonda and I, when we went to Hawaii a few years ago, we went kayaking. Now, I've done kayaking down the Illinois River, and that's a blast. You just kind of get on there and kind of goof around for a few hours and get off. Well, I didn't know that we were going to get on in the ocean on a kayak and kayak all the way to the head of the river. I thought we were going downstream. We went upstream. That's a different story, by the way. That's a little harder. I had never done that before, so my arms are still tired, and that's been like 3 years ago or something. But here's the thing. God created, I think, and the church is the tool that God is using to save God's people. Now, the salvation comes through Jesus Christ. The church isn't the salvation, but the church is the tool. The church is an ark, not a kayak. See, a lot of us, sometimes we feel like we don't really need that many other people, and so we just kind of get this kayak thing, our freedom thing. We want to do our thing, and we want to pedal our way. We want to paddle our way. We want to just do the things we want to do. And that's okay for a few days. Matter of fact, if you got out on a kayak and you took some food with you, I bet you could exist for a week or two. But here's the thing, this is a whole year. This is a whole year, the whole cycle of everything going on. And they needed more protection than a kayak. And so the church is the ark. Church is something that's a little bigger than 2 or 3 people. It's a little bigger than East Cross. It's a little bigger than the United Methodist Church. The church is all God's people coming together and loving God and reflecting God's love to other people. Frederick Buechner is a great writer, and he wrote an essay. He called this essay the church as Noah's Ark. And so I want to reread just an excerpt from this and see if you don't think maybe this is true about the church and the ark. And he says, this is what he says. He says, in the church as in Noah's Ark, just about everything imaginable is aboard. The clean and the unclean, both. The predators and the prey. The wild and the tame. The sleek and the beautiful ones. And the ones that are ugly as sin. There are times when they all cackle and grunt and roar, and sometimes they sing together. Most of them have no clear idea just where they're supposed to be heading, or how they're supposed to get there, or what they'll find if and when they finally do. But there's jostling at the trough. There's growling and grousing, and sometimes it smells to high heaven. But even at its worst, there's at least one thing that makes it bearable within. That is the storm without. And at its best, there is shelter from the blast, a sense of somehow heading in the right direction in spite of everything. A ship that keeps afloat, and like a beacon in the dark, the hope of finding safe harbor at last. And so we have a mission statement, ministry statement here at the church. We have a ministry statement that we have because we're an ark. We're not a kayak. We didn't invite 1 or 2 people. We're all together. And sometimes, just like Buechner says, it looks a little different than what we thought it was going to on the boat, right? Church looks a little different than what we thought it was going to when we started. when we thought everything was going and everything was perfect. But here's the thing. The reason we have the ministry statement we have is because we're still learning to follow Jesus. And we want to do better in 2018 than we did in 2017. And we sure want to do better in 2019 and 20. Because we're learning to follow Jesus. And we're inviting others to join the journey. You see, when we read this story, the story of Noah's Ark, we realize that we're all on the ark, and God intends to save us, and God intends never to give up on us. He intends never to give up on us. God looks around and sees that one that will get off the ark, and before he plants a garden, before he puts up a tent over his family, he offers sacrifice and worship unto God. And God said, that pleases me so much, I'll never end the world this way again. So in the closing of this part of the series, and Chad's going to finish it up next year, or next week. Woo! Yeah, let's do it next week. So in finishing that up, we drew straws, and the song "Noah Found Grace in the Eyes of the Lord" by the Statler brothers. We were both fighting over who gets to finish that out and sing the rest of it, and so in when we flipped a coin, Chad lost. And so, just for fun, and don't forget the important parts of this story. Don't forget that this story is very important and a very great reminder of the fact that we, the church, are for salvation. But is it all right if I just go through the whole thing one time, the whole song one time, and do that as an ending of this, and then we'll finish the service? I just want to do that because sometimes in the midst of all the pain, sometimes in the midst of being on the ark, sometimes in the midst of the ark smelling to high heaven, sometimes in the midst of the journey when we can't see the light at the end of the tunnel, sometimes it's not a bad thing to just laugh a little, don't you think? Be able to smile and remember that God's there. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that whole thing, and then and Chad, just off the top, I apologize that I didn't let you finish it off next week, and and we've had lots of tears around the office all week. But, okay, whatever. Now, last week I could do the whole thing with just from memory, but there's more than one verse, and so now I've got to have some words in front of me. Ready? Remember, you're supposed to sing the chorus with me, right? All right. So you know it from last week. Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord, and it landed high and dry. Here's the verse from last week's story. Well, the Lord looked down from his window in the sky. He said, I created man, but I don't remember why. Nothing but fighting since creation days, so I'll send a little water and I'll wash them all away. The Lord came down to look around a spell. Well, there was Mr. Noah behaving mighty well. And that is the reason the scriptures record that Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord, and he landed high and dry. Now we're getting into this week's lesson. You ready? Well, the Lord said Noah, there's going to be a flood. There's going to be some water. There's going to be some mud. So take off your hat, Noah. Take off your coat. Take your 3 little boys and build yourself a boat. Noah said, Lord, I don't believe I could. The Lord said, Noah, get some sturdy gopher wood. You don't know what you can do until you try. Build it 50 cubits wide and 30 cubits high. Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord, and he landed high and dry. Ready for this one? Well, Noah said, there she is, Lord. The Lord said, Noah, it's time to get aboard. Take a creature, a he and a she, and of course Mrs. Noah and the whole family. Noah said, Lord, it's a-getting mighty dark. The Lord said, Noah, get those creatures in the ark. Noah said, Lord, it's beginning to pour. The Lord said, Noah, hurry up, I'll shut the door. Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord, and he landed high and dry. Okay, now, just for fun, I'm kind of doing a, speed it up, make it Joel, right? Well, the ark rose up on the bosom of the deep, and after 40 days, Mr. Noah took a peek, said, we're not moving, Lord, or where we at? The Lord said, you're sitting on Mount Ararat. Noah said, Lord, it's a-getting mighty dry. The Lord said, Noah, see my rainbow in the sky? Take all your people and your creatures to earth. Don't be more trouble than you're worth. Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord, and he landed high and dry. One last time, and he landed high and dry.